joined us here today. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a meeting of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. And today is Tuesday, the 7th of June, 2022. And it has just gone 13:30, which is our starting time. Honourable members, I would like to give you an opportunity to just introduce yourselves to the meeting and thereafter the officials. Just for the record, I'm Andrikus van der Westhuizen and I'm privileged to be chairing the Standing Committee. And can I give over then to Honourable Bosman?
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members. I'm Gillian Bosman, a member of this committee.
Honourable Maran?
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members and officials present. My name is Pat Maran. I'm a member of this committee. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much, honourable members, for joining us this afternoon. I believe there are some more members going to join us, but unfortunately, Honourable Botha has indicated that she's been delayed and she's still travelling to a place where she can join us. With that, can I give over to, is it Mr. Gerber, who's also joined us? If you wouldn't mind just introducing your team, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon. Gerber, Open Environment Planning. I'll ask my Chief Director to start by introducing himself, and then we can go over to the Director and then the rest of the team can introduce themselves. Thank you very much. Gottlieb.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Gottlieb Arendse here. I just had a bit of a glitch with my laptop, so I'm just linked in on my phone and trying to get again connection by my laptop. But thank you, it's an honor to be here to present the air quality management portfolio. So we would have Dr. Lena presenting in order to also to save time, the presentation, and with managers would then also support. So thank you for having us. Thank you. Joy.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and members, and our HOD Gerard Gerber and Gottlieb Arendse, our Chief Director. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present this afternoon. It is quite a lot of slides, but I will rest be assured there will be hidden slides, so we will try and stick into the allotted time. Thank you, HOD. Over to you.
Members,
okay.
Sally.
Right, so we have Sally Benson and then Bauerdien Parker and Peter Harmse, if they can introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and Honourable members. I'm Sally Benson. I'm from Air Quality Planning and Information Management.
Good, thank you and welcome.
Good.
Mr. Parker, you're either muted or very...
Sorry,
there you are.
Apologies, I'll try that again. My name is Bauerdien Parker. I'm from the Air Quality Monitoring Unit. Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and members and colleagues. I will be assisting Dr. Lena as we go along. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And just to state what we have on the agenda, therefore, and what we've requested the department to come and brief us, it is on the whole question of air quality management, specifically to the monitoring of air quality, the effect that air quality has on human health and the environment, the legislation and the enforcement thereof, and then also what management systems may be in place, etc., and also the challenges that they experience in terms of improving the air quality. And then, as a little bit of an aside, we've also asked about, and that's a question that emanated from one of our members, I think it was from Member Marais, just if you could just quickly just assure us that the crematoria in the province has got the capacity to deal with the demand, and perhaps even and let's trust that it will not be necessary, an increased demand for cremations. So I believe Dr. Liener is going to lead the presentation. I wonder if you would like just to introduce the subject, Mr. Gerber, and then hand over to her.
Yes, Chairperson, I just wanted to ask that Peter Harmse also introduce himself. He's also on the team of equality, but also because Peter is retiring at this, I have it at the end of this month after many years of loyal and hard service. So Peter, if you can just quickly turn on your camera, introduce yourself, and then we'll go straight over to Dr. Joy Liener to give the presentation, Chairperson. Thank you. Peter?
Good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon, members of Parliament, of the Standing Committee. Yeah, my name is Peter Harmse. I'm the head of a component for the regulatory services, and yeah, so it will be fair of the great. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Joy. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. So I'm going to switch over now to the presentation. I will be going then into presentation mode. And so I will be covering the crematoria also, which was a question of the Standing Committee. So just in terms of the presentation, we essentially have this is the presentation outline. I'll just give a brief overview of the Directorate Air Quality Management, and then also why is air quality management important. Going then into the legislative mandate and the context in South Africa, and then also then just to take basically the standing committees brief on, and so everything that is highlighted in blue here, that is the brief out of the standing committee. So I'll basically touch points in the three sub-directorates of the Directorate Air Quality Management where all those fit in. So Honourable Chair will see that under regulatory services, that is where I will cover the crematoria. And then lastly, just a very a summary of the challenges and the mitigation measures that we are implementing. So where do we fit in? As everybody knows, on Anton Bredel is our minister, and then Gerrit Gerber, our HOD, and Gottlieb Arendse is our Chief Director in the Chief Directorate Environmental Quality. So that is where we lie, together with waste management and also pollution and chemicals management. Our directorate is, on the organogram, we have 32 posts, but of that, only 21 is funded, and that does make it a bit challenging for us in having 11 unfunded posts. And these are the sub-directorates in the unit, in the directorate. And so you will see, Honourable Chair and members, all the vacant unfunded posts. And as I've indicated, it does make it a bit challenging for us to manage air quality. And of course, with the continuing budget constraints, we still have that challenge going forward. So why is air quality management important? We all know the Bill of Rights in terms of the Constitution, Section 24. And so in terms of air pollution, everyone can essentially be harmed by air pollution, and especially those who are vulnerable, those with asthma, heart or lung problems, the aged people, children, and those who are very much active outside. And so these are just examples of air pollution. So we find, the burning in drums. We find veld fires, emissions from facilities that are regulated in the province. And then also in our informal housing sector, indoor air quality can also be a problem in that people use for cooking and heating, fires are made inside of the homes. And so if we look at the air pollution cycle, so we've got the sources, we basically follow that cycle, and you're basically finding that it can be emitted from cars, from our gas pumps from industry, we can put, when we make fires, all those emissions go into the atmosphere. And when we cycle, we inhale. When we outside, we inhale. There can also be bioaccumulation from food when we're ingesting. And so the impact that has on human health, it basically impacts on our different organs. We measure different pollutants, and so the different pollutants will target the different organs. And sometimes you can also find that some of the pollutants, the emissions can cause cancer, but then there are also non-cancerous endpoints. And very often we see it as the respiratory impacts or the respiratory effects that we have. There can also be neurological and reproductive effects, and heart attacks and strokes are also linked to air quality. I've basically given all the slides, but I'm going to just focus on some of the slides just to highlight some of the important areas of air pollution. And so, coming to climate change, we often find that people only speak about climate change in terms of droughts and floods, but air pollution actually also causes climate change. And also these two are just inextricably linked, and they really make a dangerous pair, because with more warming of the atmosphere, it means more stagnant days, and it then also means more air pollution. And so you also find that there's bad ozone that can develop when there's car emissions that's going into the environment, and that then threatens our health and our economy. And just in terms of the health impacts of air pollution, so we measure all those air pollutants like the sulfur dioxides, the nitrous oxides, the particulate matters. These are dust, really, dust, soot, pollen, etc. Different sizes of particulate matter, and they can have specific impacts on the different organs of our body. And so it's very important for us to actually know what is happening with our air quality so that we can manage it, so that we can also then regulate the industries. And so moving on to the legislative context in South Africa. So as I've mentioned, we look at it in terms of a air quality management system, but as indicated earlier, we start with the Constitution in terms of the Bill of Rights. Everybody by now knows the NEMA, and from the NEMA there's various SEMAs and the Strategic Environmental Management Acts, and so the NEMAQUA, the Air Quality Act, is a SEMA. And from the Air Quality Act, you have various regulations that we as air quality officials then implement. And with the development of those, the promulgation of those regulations, when we develop it, we actually provide inputs to make sure that we manage air quality properly in the provinces. And so at the local government sphere, there's also municipal bylaws, and these municipal bylaws are very important, and I will talk a little bit more about it later as well, in terms of managing air pollution and noise pollution, especially at the local municipal level when it comes to nuisances and disturbances. At provincial level, we basically mandated in terms of pollution control, and that is where air quality management fits in. However, we also have mandates in terms of the Air Quality Act, where we then also provide, just in terms of our function, not only in terms of our functions in terms of the Act, but we also provide a supportive and oversight role to the municipalities in terms of air quality management. But before the Air Quality Management Act was promulgated, and really all the provisions came in effect on the 1st of April, we also had the APA, which was the Prevention of Pollution to the Atmosphere. And that APA, the big difference between the Air Quality Act and the APA is that the licensed, the regulated community, the facilities were regulated by the National Department when it was during the APA, and those registration certificates were issued by the CAPCO, who sat at the National Department of Environmental Affairs, who is now the DFFE. And in the Air Quality Act, that function was devolved to the provinces and to the district municipality, as well as the metropolitan municipalities. So we issue atmospheric emission licenses since the 1st of April 2010. And only after NEMLA 3 was gazetted did the National Department again become a licensing authority. And so, of course, there were various transitional arrangements when we moved from the APA to the NEM Aqua, but for now the NEM Aqua is fully implemented across the country. And so here, what I'll basically, in terms of the directorate, what I'll go through, we basically make sure that there's effective and consistent air quality management planning, monitoring, and compliance and enforcement. So the EMIs play also a big role when it comes to air quality management. And as I've indicated earlier, we have these three units in the directorate. And so I'll start firstly with the air quality management planning and information management unit. And this unit is really looking over the governance of the implementing the Air Quality Management Act. And so we basically monitor the performance of municipalities in implementing the Act. And so you can see province, that is our role. National has an oversight role. Apologies, that should be DFFE. And then also all spheres of government across the board in the country must designate an air quality officer and must develop an air quality management plan. So I will go into this in the presentation, but just to note that the National Department's Air Quality Management Plan is the framework which we then use to basically also implement the Air Quality Act. And we basically devolve that through the AQMP of the province and then for the municipalities as well. So each of the air quality management plans must speak to each other. We also develop an annual report, and that's our primary responsibility with inputs from the municipalities. And so just in terms of that, we have, we're currently on the implementation of our third generation air quality management plan, which was 2021, and we have the vision clean and healthy air for all in the Western Cape. And the first generation was really developed in 2010, but every 5 years we've got to basically review the plan, and so that's why we're now on our third generation. And every time when we review it, we look what should be added or what should be removed. And so of course here with the third one, we added more climate change actions to bring out that link between climate change and air quality. And of course we also focused on a broad agenda and human rights focus in, because as we know, women and children are very much affected by air quality, mostly, especially in terms of indoor air quality. And also this sector, we also need to increase the role of women in the air quality management sector. So since 2008, we've really annually been developing our annual report. And I understand that each of the standing committee members already have a hard copy of our air quality management plan, the latest one. And then electronic versions of these can be sent to Shireen. We have over the years, but I know there's new members, so we will just send those to Shireen again after the presentation. In terms of implementing the air quality management plan, there's 3 working groups that that focus on implementing the air quality management plan, and here we work very closely with the municipalities. And so what the next few slides will really cover the 3 working groups, which is basically implementing the plan in terms of air quality management and climate change, raising awareness of air quality, and then the compliance monitoring. And so here is a very young Gottlieb Arendse, our current Chief Directorate in 2006. He was the Provincial Air Quality Officer at the time. Our very first Air Quality Officers Forum held in 2006. And then we had in 2016, we had 10 years celebration of our first forum held. But more importantly, we also launched the Smart Air program at the 2016 when Piet van Styl was still around. And The Smart Air program really focuses on, we've got a strategy for it. To date, we've implemented the 3 that is highlighted in green through projects that we are doing and which I'll talk about later. Unfortunately, with the budget constraints, and I'm sure the standing committee hears this all the time, but the budget constraints really curtail the rollout of the that we really would like to roll out a bit more, but we're doing quite a lot in terms of the 3 that we focused on, and I'll talk about that later. So this is just a snapshot of the forums that we've held in the province. You will see before COVID, we really moved across the province to the different municipalities where we host the forums, and these forums are really platforms where the municipal air quality officers then learn. We basically share learning about how to deal with complex air quality matters in the different across the province. And so with COVID, of course, we started having it virtually. And going forward, we're planning to have hybrid air quality officers forums. So in terms of our oversight role with the municipalities, we really, in terms of the air quality governance, as of June, we have 30 designated air quality officers in the province. That is inclusive of myself being the provincial air quality officer. The only one outstanding currently is the air quality officer in the Overberg District Municipality, who had retired last year, and so the Overberg District Municipality is currently in the process of filling that post, and then that one will also be designated. We've had a meeting with them in May to basically ensure that we have the air quality officer designated, because it is so important to have that air quality officer designated to make sure that the mandate is fulfilled in the region. Then, in terms of the air quality management plans, we currently have 30 that we are implementing across the province, including the provincial AQMP. The only one that is outstanding is Beaufort West. So over the years, we've really been working with Beaufort West and holding their hand and assisting them to develop a draft air quality management plan, which is now has been drafted. COVID, of course, came into when the COVID pandemic started. The public participation process could not take place. However, there's challenges at the municipality, and for us, we're constantly engaging with the municipality and also through our minister, and we're hoping to have that draft adopted by their council. But of course, a public participation process first needs to happen. And then of concern for us is the air quality management bylaws. So in the past, we've really focused to get all the air quality officers in place, get all the air quality management plans, and now our focus is on getting all the municipalities to have municipal bylaws that focus on air quality. So we currently have 17 in the province, and it's very important to have these bylaws so that the municipalities, especially at the local level, can focus on attending to air quality matters in the region when it comes to nuisances and disturbances. So here, just to quickly show you, this is the status of the air quality management plans and the air quality officer designation as at June 2022. So here you can see for immediate review are these municipalities, and of course I've highlighted the Beaufort West one as a big concern for us that we are engaging with through the Simon time process as well. And then next year to focus on these ones so that they can at least start on their second generation air quality management plan. And so this is the area where Sally's units are really focusing and working very closely with the municipalities. And I think we should also be cognizant that the development of air quality management plan is not just an overnight quick thing. So it will take some time, and we're hoping it takes generally 2 years, because you've got to go through a public participation regulation review process. You've got to go back to the public with your AQMP and so on. So we are working with these municipalities. In terms of the bylaws, these are just the municipalities that we will focus on in terms of getting their bylaws, at least to start with their bylaws. And again, we all know that it's not overnight process. So we need to work with the municipalities. Then, in terms of the air quality awareness raising, our different municipalities, they do various things across the board. I'm only showing these ones, but the standing committee has all the examples in the presentation, the full presentation. And so this is really about making sure that people are aware of the air quality, because out of sight is out of mind. People may think that we have good air quality generally in the province, but we need to make sure that we manage the air quality so that it does remain good. In terms of special projects, what this unit is also doing in terms of the Smart Air program, the unit has, we've partnered with the Bavarian State Ministry of Bavaria on a refrigeration and air conditioning partnership project. And these are just the highlights of the achievements of the project. So there was a lot of awareness raising. There was exchange delegations between Bavaria and Cape Town. We also had 9 trainers going to Frankfurt at their own expense, where they were then taken, once they landed in Germany, they were then taken care of by the Bavarian Ministry in terms of the cool training. So we've got 9 trained experts, 2 of which is women, 1 in the government sector and 1 in the private sector. And they've really been instrumental in taking this project forward, especially in terms of participating in the technical workshops that we had during this project. The highlight, probably the top highlight of the project, was that we partnered with the West Coast College, where last year, December, we launched the hydrocarbon training laboratory. And so we're continuing that partnership with the West Coast College. And here, this is really about upskilling technicians on the safe handling and use of natural refrigerants in the RAC sector. And this all links to the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, which South Africa is a signatory to. And then another special project that we linked to the Smart Air program is the emissions inventory. And here we basically have the listed activities, which is your regulated facilities in the province. And these numbers are basically representing what we are managing in terms of the facilities that have atmospheric emission licenses. This slide was updated from the presentation that honourable members received on Friday, just to give the updated figures. And then we also have the controlled emitters, which is your boilers, which is not regulated in terms of Section 21. And so all of that information in our department, we then feed through to the Directorate Climate Change, where we're currently busy looking at the vulnerability mapping of how air quality then impacts also on human health. And so that is really work in progress at this point in time. But also just to state that the emissions inventory is very important, as I've mentioned, in climate change response, but also in spatial planning, as well as informing air quality management planning in the province. Spatial planning, I'll give an example later of complaints when spatial planning goes wrong and the complaints we then receive in terms of air quality management. Moving on to the second directorate, the Directorate Air Quality Regulatory Services. So this is really where we are a licensing authority together with the Metro, the district and the national department, where we then also have to monitor compliance in terms of the facilities that we regulate in terms of Section 21. And here we get inputs from the local municipality, but the local municipality also, this is again where their bylaws become important, and the regulations that is promulgated in terms of the Air Quality Act becomes important for the local municipalities, because in terms of dust and odor and noise, they will then have to manage the air pollution or the air quality in their municipal regions that are not regulated in terms of Section 21. And so here, for us in our department, we've since 2010, we have been the licensing authority for municipalities, and so currently we are regulating 3 AELs, and mostly from the city of Cape Town, not mostly, all from the city of Cape Town. We also previously had a pyrolysis plant at Kraaifontein, which was decommissioned, so that one is no longer. But we also have a compliance inspection program, which this unit basically manages. And so because the unit is very small in terms of human resource capacity, we for now have indicated that we will be doing 4 per year. And so since 2013, that brings it to about 36 official formal compliance inspections of the regulated facilities, but that doesn't mean that we don't participate in ad hoc blitz operations with the Department of with the Directorate Environmental Law Enforcement. So we do that as well. And during COVID, my team was actually very active with environmental law enforcement. And we also work closely, as I've mentioned, with the licensing authorities. And then also there's the processing of applications in terms of the integrated environmental management processes. And COVID has really changed how we do things, as you can see. So we definitely during that period maintained social distancing, but we continued with our compliance inspections. This slide has also been updated since Friday. So here we can see that since 2010, this is basically how we've regulated, we've issued licenses across the different licensing authorities. And here in 2021, we can see that 13 provisional licenses were regulated, and 124 licenses have been regulated since in 2021. What the difference between a provisional and a AEL is, here this is a facility that for the first time would apply for a license. They are then issued a provisional atmospheric emission license, and that license, they've got to show compliance with the conditions of that license for a continuous period of 6 months before a final atmospheric emission license then gets issued. And a feather in the cap for the Western Cape is that the licensed, the regulated industries, when we engage with them, we also engage that they must report to the National Atmospheric Emission Inventory System. And so this is really something that is beyond our control. If however, when I say beyond our control, what I mean is the facilities need to upload their reports to the NAICE reporting system. And if they don't, of course, then there's compliance and enforcement that needs to happen, and which we then implement. So over the years, we've really improved on this, and so this year we really got 100% in terms of the facilities reporting. And so that really is a feather in the cap for our province. And then, as I've mentioned, in terms of law enforcement, the EMIs play a very important role, and that is really just to ensure and assist that the regulated community comply with all the environmental legislation. And here, just to point out going forward, these are the municipalities that we're basically targeting to do the compliance and enforcement. This is really where atmospheric emission licenses are being regulated. Of course, the Central Karoo does not have any atmospheric emission licenses, but that does not mean that we don't go and do compliance and enforcement. We often go out with waste management to landfill sites when there is burning and air pollution coming from burning. So we do that as well. Coming back to the crematoria, which Honourable Chair asked earlier and the Honourable Member inquired about. So what we've done in terms of the crematoria during the COVID period, of course, we realized that crematoria would be very important. And so we really worked very closely with the different licensing authorities in the province. We've got 5 crematoria in the province. We are the licensing authority for the Maitland crematorium, and here these are the different licensing authorities for the respective facilities, and this is the capacity when they are operating on a 24-hour period. And this was at last week where all the crematoria were operational. That was the period ending 29 May. And so we get this information, we get on a weekly basis since the 15th of March 2020. So we basically, pardon the lockdown started at the end of March, but we also then asked them for information prior to lockdown so that we could just see what was happening at the crematorium. And this is just basically the reporting that we got during the week of 23 to 29 May. We had at the in total for the whole of the province in that week 3,331 cremations, of which 4 were COVID-19. So in terms of capacity, we currently do have the capacity in the province. Of course, when we had those waves during the early stages, we engaged on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, with the licensing authorities, with the license holders, to make sure that we come through the waves. And that was probably the most challenging time, but we really made sure that the crematoria had the capacity. And at the time when there were no capacity, like for example at Maitland Crematorium, when they were completely full, Maitland Crematorium would then pass over to the Durbanville Memorial Park, where undertakers would then take the decedents over to the Memorial Park. And so that is how we then coped with or managed the cremations at the crematoria. In terms of complaints handling, we found that we've been basically tracking the number of complaints that's coming into the different district municipalities. And here you can see the ones in red. What I've highlighted here, offensive odors is a challenge in terms of complaints. Of course, nobody likes it when you smell something in the air. So of course the complaints will come in. And then on the West Coast, dust is a concern. And then also in the city of Cape Town, noise has really been the one, and this really emanates from discos, nightclubs, car racing, etc. And so the city of Cape Town has a really good noise unit, and we partner very closely, which I'll talk about later, with the city of Cape Town. When there are complex complaints, we generally establish intergovernmental task teams, which we then lead and we coordinate. And so just as an example here, the first top 3, we've really resolved the issues, long-standing complex issues in the Garden Route District Municipality. Sorry, that should be not EDM, but GRDM. And here, the Garden Route District Municipality Air Quality Officer has taken over the function of the IGTT, but we haven't really, he's really been managing it very well in that region. So whenever complaints pop up, it gets addressed immediately with industry or facility or etc. The 2 that is still ongoing is in St. Helena Bay, complaints in terms of the fish processing plant. So this is very much odor related. I'll talk a little bit more about that also later. And then the Saldanha Bay, at the port, Transnet port terminals, in terms of the bulk storage and the multi-storage terminals, where the West Coast District Municipality is the licensing authority for the management and the handling of ore. And here we have the Greater Saldanha Bay IGTT, our department, and which meets on a quarterly basis, and that is run by a different unit. Where we come in on the air quality sub-working group, we actually have been meeting bi-monthly to address issues of ore handling on the West Coast. So bi-monthly, initially it was weekly, and now it's bi-monthly, where we meet with the West Coast District Municipality and Saldanha Bay Municipality, and sometimes also with DFFE to address issues of complaints and just to manage what is happening at the port. This one is very important, just in terms of town and regional planning that I've indicated earlier, that I'll come back to. Here is a very good example of where town and regional planning impacts on air quality. Here you have a concrete mix facility right next to a residential area. And so what we've done is we've actually gone into to meet with town and regional planners in a forum where we've showcased or highlighted the impacts that we find when town and regional planning goes wrong. We've raised really the or where we have these situations, and so we've raised the awareness of the air quality issues in town and regional planning, and usually the issues come out is odor, noise, dust, etc. Then in terms of capacity building, which we do, as well as in partnership with the National Environmental Department. So again, as I've mentioned, the NAICE training. So for facilities to report to NAICE, the authorities also need to understand the system. And so since 2015, we've really been working very closely with the municipalities. This was in ODM, where we had hands-on training with the municipality, and we basically continue to have that every year. And as you can see, we're continuing to partner with the National Department. In June and July, there's further NAICE training with the authorities, but very often we also invite the license holders so that they can also understand and report to the NAICE reporting system. And that system is really the inventory that helps us in terms of planning air quality in the country, and also tackling climate change response, because then we know what is happening in the different areas. In terms of noise control, I've indicated that we partner very closely with the City of Cape Town, but then also we partner with Stellenbosch Municipality, with Martin van As, and here we annually host in-house capacity building sessions. Previously, we used to outsource it to specialist noise engineers, acoustic engineers. But since partnering with the City of Cape Town, we've really been offering it in-house. We promulgated the Western Cape Noise Control Regulations in 2013, and so that is what the municipalities are implementing. However, when it comes to disturbing to noise nuisances, that is where their bylaws then would need to kick in. And at these capacity building sessions, we also look at gender disaggregation. So, and these are the municipalities that generally respond to our capacity building. Of course, we then need to target going forward those municipalities that do not really come to our capacity building sessions, but these are the ones that always respond. As you can see, females are very low compared to males, and so of course we are working on that as well. Coming to the last one, the last subdirectorate, which is our air quality monitoring. So here we can see municipalities have a primary principal responsibility to monitor air quality in the province. And us as province also has a primary responsibility to monitor air quality, and then also to monitor the performance of the municipality in terms of implementing the Air Quality Act. And so here, just to show you, sorry, just taking a sip of water. So here with a network, we basically have a network which our department manages, and then the City of Cape Town started the very first network in the province in 1992, and they are still going strong. Saldanha Bay Municipality came on board in 2014. They currently have 2 stations in their region. And then also the West Coast District Municipality that came on board in 2017. So this basically forms the Western Cape Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Network, which we then oversee and assist the municipalities. So this is our network, the locations where we are located. These are the parameters that we are also measuring. Just to note, not all these parameters are measured at each of these stations. For example, in Oudtshoorn, because of the complaints we received there in the past and the IGTT that we formed in terms of odor, we really only monitor H2S in Oudtshoorn and in Hout Bay. We have moved our monitoring station from St. Helena Bay to Saldanha Bay, and then also we measure particulate matter at some of the stations. We also measure carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. We measure at some of the stations, and at all of the stations we measure meteorological conditions, because without these conditions we would not know what the dispersion of the air pollutants in the ambient air is, or these criteria pollutants are. And so very nice, and I think the standing committee members, I would like to show you or direct you to the Google Play Store, and also if you're using the Apple the Apple Store, you would be able to download an app where there is live reporting of our monitoring stations across the country. And so this is just the focus on the Western Cape. And here you will see that at the Cape Point station, which is managed by SAWS, here you can see that the air quality was moderate at this point in time when we looked at the app. And here you can also see that across the province, our air quality is good. So this is really the National Air Quality Index, which goes from 1 to 10, hazardous being 10. And so just to show you, on the 2nd of June last week, when we pulled this, we could see there was basically, that was the air quality at the Gore station was moderate. However, half an hour later, we saw that the air quality was actually good. And this is just an indication of the influence of long range transport of air pollutants. So something happened there, but then dispersion of the air pollutants. So things can just happen very quickly. So as I've mentioned, we are now reporting in real time to SACWIS. We've really, prior to 2020, our network was aging, and we were really very worried about our network. We then recapitalized our network since 2020 to 2022, and we really improved our data significantly at the stations. And then also, just to indicate this slide was also updated since Friday. In May, there were 3 stations that reported basically below the data recovery, and that was of 75%, and that was really due to load shedding. Our stations also are at risk of vandalism. So we have moved our stations away from where it was vandalized to areas where there is now 24-hour security of our monitoring stations. These are expensive equipment, so we need to procure to protect it, and we also bring in docs to basically assess the situations and to advise. And again, just to indicate that members of the standing committee can access that information off the SACWIS website as well. So since 2006, we've been monitoring air quality, and the red lines are the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And so here you can see that at these stations where we are monitoring nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and the particulate 10, these annual averages were below the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And we have improved our data recovery to greater than 80% at most of our stations, bar it being impacted by load shedding or if analyzers go down. And there's just 3 stations that are currently not reporting in real time. So we are working with SAWS to basically get those 3 stations also to report to SACWIS. In terms of the City of Cape Town, We have their monitoring network. They've really looked at investing in the infrastructure and looking to improve air quality monitoring in the city of Cape Town. They have, however, permanently decommissioned the city hall station, because they do have the foreshore station, which is literally a couple of meters, 100 meters away from City Hall. And then they also have the Athlone station and the Somerset West station, which is coming online again. They've upgraded the station, and so that one should be coming online now during June, July. They also have a dedicated air quality laboratory. We've discussed just before the sad passing of the head of scientific services, Mparo Haloy. We've discussed a partnership with them to be able to use their monitoring laboratory space for doing calibrations. And so that discussions is ongoing with the City of Cape Town and also with SAWS and the National Department. Then just in terms of the City of Cape Town, the monitoring that they've been doing. So here you can see that's again the National Ambient Air Quality Standards for NOx and SOx and for PM10, and it's all below the ambient air quality standard except at Khayelitsha. And as we know, in Khayelitsha there are no major industries. So where is this coming from? And this is likely attributed to local influence of windblown dust. We know there's lots of sand. The word is escaping me now. In the area, and then also the local meat vendors. And so then on the West Coast, they're measuring H2S, and it's really been below this. We don't have standards for H2S, but we're following the World Health Organization's guideline, and H2S has really been below the World Health Organization guideline of 150 micrograms per cubic meter. And then in Saldanha Bay, where we have the complex complaints regarding the TPT site. So the Saldanha Bay local municipality, they've basically placed 7 dust buckets out there. And this slide just shows in terms of the dust control regulations, you can see that there were on occasion exceedances of the dust control regulation standard. However, if you look at the dates, this was really during the drought, so it was very dry, wind-blown dust most likely, and then also here in 2019, also during a dry period and most likely wind-blown dust causing these exceedances. Generally, the other air quality parameters that they are measuring at their 2 continuous monitoring stations, which is now reporting in real time to SAQUS, those are generally below the national ambient air quality standards. Then if we go to Central Karoo, where there are no regulated facilities, but here there's emerging risks, and we all know of the proposed uranium mining and shale gas development in the Central Karoo at the time. And so what Central Karoo did a couple of years ago, they invested in a baseline study to understand what is happening in the area in terms of molybdenum and thorium and uranium. And those levels were all below the detection limit. And that means that should those type of mining take place, at least we have a baseline to start off from, which was really good. PM10 levels were also measured during that study, and it was all below the national ambient air quality standards. However, the Central Karoo is very much budget constrained, and so more monitoring is required in the area. As I've mentioned earlier, there are no licensed facilities that are regulated, but however, of course, monitoring is still needed to get that baseline understanding. And then this is what we also did during the COVID pandemic in terms of our monitoring. And we saw the very clear link between air pollution and the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, when we went into lockdown, basically the whole world wanted to know what is happening to the air emissions and what is happening to air quality. And this is just from Europe, where they've basically seen nitrogen dioxide and PM10 levels drop during April, during the hard lockdown. I'll show you what happened in our region. Very much similar, different patterns we saw, very interesting. And then also we know that the vulnerable people are also susceptible to air pollution. And so what is that link then to COVID-19? So there's lots of studies that are ongoing, and we are actually looking forward to more of those studies coming out. But in terms of what happened with us, so here you can see this was a screen grab on the 8th of May 2020, when we had our restrictions in terms of the national disaster COVID-19 pandemic. And here you can see in the Western Cape, so the air quality was good, basically ranging here around 1. And then just up in Gauteng area, I think the briefing was also to find out how does it look in other areas. So basically around Bloemfontein, unhealthy, and then hazardous also. But again, just to indicate, this was a screenshot at the time, and probably a couple of days later it would be lower. In fact, I did check last week also for globally in the country, and so it was the air quality. National Air Quality Index was ranging between good and moderate. So we then zoomed into our stations, and I think this was very interesting. We found at Stellenbosch, there was definitely a decline in the trend in the nitrogen dioxides, the particulate matter, and sulfur dioxide. And this really points to transport activity, because we went into a lockdown during that period, hard lockdown, no transport, very few people traveling. So you can see that happening at our Stellenbosch station. In our George station here, you can see the red is the pre-lockdown, and the blue is the lockdown. And here you can see clear diurnal cycles pre-lockdown. So that is basically the inclines and the dips, whereas during lockdown, it was you didn't see that that diurnal cycles, and that really reflects reduced traffic emissions. And we know in the Western Cape that traffic emissions are what is the main source of our emissions to our air. And so basically, traffic management is something that we need to look at as a potential air pollution management tool. Then in George, we also saw a pronounced decline in the sulfur dioxide and ozone. However, we didn't see it in NOx, and that was quite interesting. So we need to explore why that was not so apparent. Then in Khayelitsha, remember I indicated there's not very many there isn't industries in Khayelitsha. And so here, what was interesting, there was a shift in the diurnal, the daily peaks to 3 hours later. And this shift was probably linked to the curfew time. So people started moving around in Khayelitsha much later. And so that then we picked that shift up in the Khayelitsha monitoring station. So it's actually quite interesting. And this just shows the influence that we as humans have on our air pollution, even though we don't see it. Like the World Health Organization calls it the invisible pollutant or invisible killer. But even though we don't see it, we need to manage it, because this clearly shows how we are impacting on air pollution. In terms of special projects in this unit, there was a human health risk assessment study that we did, finished in 2016. A PhD study came out of this at UCT, and then also 5 publications. But very importantly, out of this came recommendations, which we then started implementing. But of course, because of budget constraints, we needed to basically because of budget constraints, a lot of them were placed on hold. Yeah, so we need to look at that as well. But what came out of it, we acquired portable air quality monitoring units to augment our stations, and we then placed that at Shelley Point. And also then at additional sites at Maitland during the COVID pandemic, when we didn't have a full continuous monitoring station there, but now we do have a station there. But and then also in Hermanus, where there were veld fires and community concerns, we went out with our portable monitor, stayed there for 2 days to monitor what was happening in the area. And then also in the DEDP offices, we had used our portable air quality monitors. Then another recommendation was the drone technology, the use of drone technology and portable air sampling. And this is really to augment the monitoring network, but also to assist the environmental law enforcement unit and our regulatory unit when they go out to industries, because then you can actually monitor what is coming out of industries in real time. However, due to budget constraints and also officials leaving our department, so with them goes the capacity. So currently we have one official remaining, but we now have a network in that our environmental law enforcement, they have been trained in as remote pilots. And so we are basically collaborating with them. And at the departmental level, we are resurrecting the use of drones in the department, or not resurrecting, but basically planning how do we use it going forward. And then in terms of dispersion modeling in the Greater Saldanha Bay area, because of the complex complaints in that area and also the development that's happening in the area, we said that we will focus on that area to do dispersion modeling. And here again, these are specialized skills. And some of the staff that we've trained have actually moved on. So what happens is we train our staff and of course they move into higher positions elsewhere. And so that does leave capacity constraints and challenges for us. So we basically focusing on the Greater Saldanha Bay area, but we would like to do this for the entire region and for the entire Western Cape eventually. I've mentioned the workspace that we've acquired in 2019. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints, we cannot do calibrations at this stage in the workspace, but we are looking to partner with the City of Cape Town so that we can do our own calibrations of our monitoring stations. Calibrations are very important, and so we do it currently through appointing service providers to do it, but eventually we would like to do that. Then, in summary, the air quality management in the province, we essentially, what I've explained now is a systems approach to air quality management. And so here you will see we basically follow this system. I've spoken about dispersion modeling, the emissions inventory, control measures, emission standards, how we monitor. This is where political decisions also feed into the system. And so that is the system that we basically following to protect human health and to improve air quality in the Western Cape. So our biggest achievements have really been that we've upgraded our network over the years since 2020. Since 2020, we've also promulgated the noise control regulations, which the municipalities are using. We've also implemented our atmospheric emission licensing system in the department, 100%. In terms of NAACE, so that's a feather in the cap for the Western Cape province. The health risk assessment study, lots coming out of there and recommendations that are still being implemented. And then in terms of RAC project, also continuing the collaboration with the hydrocarbon training laboratory at the West Coast. In terms of challenges, I've mentioned the staff resignations throughout. And then, of course, in the past, we had the freezing of the posts, which really resulted in the 11 vacant unfunded, which really places a challenge on us to deliver. However, we do deliver. and that mostly means that staff work after hours to make sure that we're delivering the service to our people in the province. Theft and vandalism, I've indicated how we basically move. We've moved our stations away to areas where it can be monitored on a 24-hour basis. Budget cuts and inconsistent power supply, such as load shedding, also impacts on our data recovery. However, we basically started recapitalizing our network, which is great. Data recovery has improved. And in the COVID pandemic, we managed the crematoria, and we're still continuing with that. And then also in terms of no public meetings, when we were running our review of our AQMP, we actually did that via the online system. We had surveys which we sent out. So that was our public participation process that we then had. And then also, how did we deal with compliance inspections? Basically, during the waves, COVID waves, we delayed it for after the wave. And so we managed to, we still continued with our compliance inspections and delivered on our targets that we set out for ourselves. We are dependent on external parties for some of the aspects of air quality management. And so going forward, we are, as I've indicated, we are partnering with municipalities like the City of Cape Town and also with SAWS and DFFE to make sure that we get the data so that we can do more dispersion modeling. From the lessons learned, we have appointed interns in the past, and we're looking to do that again. However, they do require mentoring and, of course, staff working after hours, as I've indicated. In terms of asset management, we also have a strategic asset management. So these basically talk to each other. A strategic asset management strategy in the department, because our assets are strategic assets in the department. So we really have to make sure that we look after those assets and deliver on the service that we, in terms of air quality. We also, as I've mentioned, work with DOCS to do security assessments, and we've placed our stations at where there is 24-hour security with adequate fencing around our monitoring stations. We've also prioritized the budgets, and we engage constantly with municipalities to ensure that we deliver a service in the province. Then, maybe just in terms of closing thoughts, our biggest challenges to tackle, and now I see tackle is actually spelled incorrectly, apologies for that. During the next 10 years, budget cuts is severely impacting the monitoring network. This year, for example, we do not have any budget available for replacing aging infrastructures, even though we have, when I say aging infrastructure, our analyzers, we do have a strategy, and we do still have analyzers that are quite old that we do need to replace, but unfortunately we do not have budget, and so we basically patching, but with that comes data recovery issues. And so currently we are needing to basically get budget going forward, and we do continue to motivate to Provincial Treasury for budget. The next challenge probably is municipalities not fully taking up their functions, but with that, we are having constant meetings with our licensing authorities especially. And in going forward, we also having on a quarterly basis, in addition to the forums, we also have technical meetings where we discuss issues, where we tease out any problems with licensing authorities to make sure that the licenses are issued on time to the facilities when there are applications. Then criteria pollutants are showing an increasing trend. And that is, of course, linked to climate change. And then the emerging risks that I've spoken about, the shale gas development and mining. And then also human resource capacity is urgently needed so that we can do more compliance and enforcement of the regulated facilities, and also air quality monitoring. And then just some closing thoughts. We need to strengthen the linkages, and we've already started engaging over the years, but even more so now through the SIME and time process, and then also with our Directorate Spatial Planning and with the DFF DDF unit, our Directorate Facilitation Unit, to basically make sure that town and regional planning, basically when that happens, that we take into consideration the impacts that facilities may have on people living in the area. So that is very important, and we are engaging, as I've mentioned, with the respective units in our department and also with the municipalities in terms of town and regional planning. And again, we just need to be proactive, and we are proactive. We are prioritizing air quality management in the province, and we need to guard against poor air quality. We've got good air quality, but relatively good air quality compared to other provinces. However, that is because we are engaging with the municipalities, we are engaging with facilities, we are managing our air quality. And then, as I've mentioned, we're dependent on external authorities, and very often, I don't know if you've seen that picture where you push the rock up and then the rock comes down, and then you push the rock up and then then it comes down. And so to make that work, that rock needs to stay up there. We are working with the local government and SAWS and DFFE very closely in terms of air quality management. An area that is also big, where our citizens are also becoming more increasingly aware of in their environmental and human rights. And so we encourage citizen science. And if you saw, that was our last pillar of our Smart Air program, where we really need to focus more closely on citizen science and awareness raising to support authorities to manage air quality in their areas. And then at the end of the day, just to leave everyone with this comment, we can only manage what one knows. One can only manage what one knows. And for example, if we monitor air quality, then we can advise and we can manage air quality. We can advise our spatial planning and our air quality management and the town and regional planners. And so with that, I would like to thank the contributions of everybody in the Chief Directorate Environmental Quality, in our directorate, and then of course also all the municipalities in the province that basically contributes to managing air quality in the province. And so with that, I thank you, Chairperson and honourable members. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lena. Are there any of your colleagues that would like to add anything at this point in time?
Gottlieb, Chairperson, I see Gottlieb's hand is up.
Yes, please come in, and then I'll give our honourable members an opportunity to pose questions as well. Mr. Arendse.
Thank you, Chairperson and members. Just there was one question which the Standing Committee posed to us around burial sites. That is that's not within the air quality mandate. That's obviously linked to a municipal function, and during COVID or currently still, there is a mass fatalities work stream headed by local government. And so, yeah, so it's not an air quality function. That's why we didn't cover it within this presentation. Thank you.
Arendse, Mr. Gerber.
Thank you. I'm partly covered by what Gottlieb just said, and then I just wanted to thank the team, but covered. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Gerber. Honourable members, there's an opportunity for you to pose questions. I do not see any hands. Oh, there's the hand of Honourable Bosman. Honourable Bosman, please come in, and then Honourable Maran.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I would just like to know, so since the unit is assisting municipalities with making sure that their bylaws are up to date, is there also a monitoring tool that looks at the capacity of municipalities to be able to enforce any infringements? Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Maran.
Thanks very much, Chair. And again, good afternoon to everyone. Chair, also on the issue of bylaws or a air quality management system, and I saw that Beaufort West basically have not won. Just to check whether work is ongoing to make sure that there is a bylaw or a management quality system in place in Beaufort West, especially with the issue of fracking, Chair, in your gas, that they will be exploring within the following years to come. That's the one. The second one, Chair, we have heard now. First, let me also welcome this presentation. We have heard now the impact that air pollution and the control thereof, the impact that it have on human life, Chair, that it have basically on the environment. We are also part of the agriculture standing committee, and I would like to hear, Chair, the impact on agriculture, Chair, that air pollution have. And then the last one, Chair, municipalities in their waste. We have seen over the last couple of years many fires at some of these waste plants, Swellendam, Telbach, Woester, Brede Valley. What was the contribution, or did this department, especially the air quality monitoring, have they had a say in the waste plan that will be the waste plan, the regional waste plan that will be put in place over the next year or so in your Woester area, next to a avian park suburb, where there's people very close to, there will be people very close to that particular site if it's going to happen. Were they consulted in that particular issue, and if not, why not? And if, what was their input on a possible waste plan that will be put up in Woester? Thanks.
Very much, and if I may just add, in terms, and I think I'm linking on to Honourable Bosman's question. In order to be able to take any of the people transgressing to court, I think you need to have calibrated equipment, and you probably have to prove that the pollution is coming from a specific source. So are we in a position then to go and defend our position in a court that will stand up in a court of law? And have we had any successful cases where in the Western Cape, where or some of the municipalities have been able to take people that transgress to court? The second one is just, if you could just explain perhaps the whole issue of an emission license, because I assume that, you know, a small plant or a small factory will emit obviously less dangerous gases than a bigger one, but then it's no use we have 10 small ones, whereas perhaps the bigger one may have better control over its emissions, etc. How do we distinguish, or what is allowable for an industry or a specific factory to emit? And then lastly, last week on Friday on a climate change conference, I learned that methane gases are far more damaging and contributing to climate change and the changes in the atmosphere than even CO2 emissions. The figure was mentioned of 80 times more dangerous. And we know that, and here I link on to what Honourable Maran has referred to as our solid waste facilities, that many solid waste facilities then also, you know, emit a methane gas to the extent that in some cases it can even be put to good use for electricity or power generation. So perhaps if you could just give me an indication of to what extent are these solid waste sites allowed to emit methane gas, and what can we do to limit that. Should it be the case that methane gas is so dangerous to the environment. Dr. Lina, can I hand over to you
Sure.
to deal with the questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Honourable Chair, and members of the Standing Committee. So just in terms of I'll also deflect questions where others can also help me out with the questions. It's also good to get a perspective of our officials that is also sitting online. So just in terms of Honourable Bosman's question on assisting municipalities on enforcement and how do we enforce infringements. And so in terms of that, we really partner very closely with our department, with our Directorate Environmental Law Enforcement. The municipalities, we also track how many EMIs are at the different municipalities. And so we engage very closely with Ahmad Basir, who is the Director Environmental Law Enforcement. All of the designations of the officials at the municipalities basically go still through the Directorate Environmental Law Enforcement. And so in that way, we know exactly who are the EMIs at the municipalities, and we also know, we also engage with them in terms of having new officials trained at the municipalities. So National generally on an annual basis have EMI training that is offered. We just recently in May had EMI training offered in Cape Town. There were quite a few municipal officials that are trained, that participated in that training. And I think what we can do here, Chairperson, is if the Standing Committee wants, we could provide a list of the municipalities where there are EMIs basically doing the enforcement. However, we don't leave the municipalities, the municipal officials on their own to enforce. Very often it is a partnership between us and environmental law enforcement and the municipalities when we go to facilities that where enforcement is needed. So that is in terms of Honourable Bosman's question. Then in terms of Honourable Moran, Honourable asked about, was it Beaufort West in terms of the air quality management plan and the bylaw and the fracking. So we have really started working with the Beaufort West municipality. Sure, Sally can help me out. I think it was in 2015, where that municipality was the municipality where we really, because they don't have budget, we then started working very closely with them. And there is a draft air quality management plan. As I've indicated, it needs to go through a public participation process. We are now working through the SIME and time process, and engaging with the municipality so that they can have the air quality management plan go through a public participation process and have it adopted by their council. And so that is ongoing. In terms of the bylaw, so as I've indicated, there's a couple of municipalities now that we need to very strongly focus on and work with them to get their bylaws at least beginning, and also taking into consideration fracking. But our department has also put together an action plan, which I think which we've basically contributed towards in terms of air quality, but also other areas in terms of fracking, shale gas development in the Central Karoo. And so the municipalities, Beaufort West Municipality, as well as the Central Karoo District Municipality, also contributed to the that shale gas action plan. And that action plan can also be shared if it has not already been shared and with the Standing Committee. That was not headed by air quality management because we only fed into the process, but it was handled by Paul Hardcastle, the Director for Policy and Governance in the department. In terms of agriculture, Honourable Maran also asked about agriculture. So I've basically, if you look at the slide, that is the impact of agriculture. So you would have, for example, if you have nitrogen dioxide, which is toxic to plants at that level, and also sulfur dioxide and ozone, and that really can cause acid rain. And that picture is essentially what can happen we haven't had that in our province, so we've been managing our air quality very well. And I always come back to, how do you manage the air quality? How do you look at the regulated facilities? And so this is the impact that poor air pollution can have on food security and plant growth. That's in terms of agriculture. Then in terms of waste, I am going to call on Gottlieb also, because Gottlieb is he's our Chief Director, but he also used to be our waste director before he became our Chief Director. But essentially in terms of the waste facilities, whenever there are landfill challenges, when there are fires at our landfill, of course people see the smoke, and so immediately people think air quality and contact us. And so what we do is we go out with our waste officials, and we assess what is happening in terms of air quality at the landfill sites, and also in terms of our contribution when we in EIA processes. We basically our inputs on facilities would be in terms of dust, the national dust control regulations, where facilities must make sure that they comply with the dust control regulations. In terms of odor, we also, of course, there is no odor standards, but we look at the World Health Organization guidelines. And then also in terms of noise, where facilities would also then implement the noise control regulations of the province. So, but if Gottlieb maybe wanted to add, or Peter, or any of our officials, and then we can go on to, after that, we can go on to Honourable van der Westhuizen's questions on noise and, sorry, on taking people to court, etc. But maybe just quickly over to Gottlieb. Thanks.
Thank you, Joy, and thank you, Honourable Maran and Chairperson. Yes, just maybe if I can add on the agriculture. So there's impact on agriculture, but agriculture also got impact on air pollution. And here I'm referring to crop spraying and also the burning of stubs. And we have also within our Air Quality Officers Forum been, looking at these issues. We obviously dependent on other authorities like the civil aviation when it comes to crop spraying. But also there is, in terms of where the agricultural sector also looking at how can they do crop spraying differently. And here's also with drone technology, I think in future would be playing a role. So there is, yes, vice versa, also impact agriculture on air pollution. When it comes to the waste, remember, Maran, the issue is, yes, especially when it's a new facility and when it's a waste disposal facility, they do require impact reports. And you asked a question around consultation. Air quality management would be a commenting authority within that process. So the EAP, the practitioner, would be then forward on the impact assessor to forward that report, specialized reports, to our air quality management unit as their responsibility. But also within our own chief director, we will ensure that there's commenting from our air quality management component within that specialist report. So that's, in terms of our burning. Also, by the way, if it's burning, which happen at these waste facilities, it is against their license. years back, we're under the ECA regime. We had, especially the communal waste facilities where it was allowed at that time, Water Affairs was still the licensing authority. But since the new legislative regime under Waste Act and the licensing processes, burning of waste, is forbidden. It's against this. It's a non-compliant, compliance issue. But it does happen, and that's where our waste colleagues would go out, given it's a compliance issue. Thanks, Joy. I can also assist on the other issues coming up. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gottlieb. Okay, and then to come back to Honourable van der Westhuizen's questions about taking people to court and defending in court. So there have been successful cases, and then, of course, there's also been cases that have been thrown out of court. Noise, for example, Neisner had successful cases on noise that was taken to court. In terms of at the City of Cape Town, unfortunately, there a noise case was basically thrown out of court. And then I do recall, I can call on Peter Harmse. There was also a case on the West Coast where facilities were taken to court, and Peter has had the opportunity to basically go into court and to be also basically respond on questions from the advocates. But essentially, for one to take people to court, you would have to of course have clear and evidence to be able to succeed in your cases. So it's very important when you're taking anybody to court that you have evidence that will be able to stand up in a court of law. So if we can just take maybe that question, and then the last two questions we will then continue. But maybe just to stop here, Gottlieb also indicated he has something to add, and then also maybe from Peter's side, if there's anything that Peter would like to add. Gottlieb?
Thank you, Joy, and thank you, Chairperson. Yes, just to add, I think when we were starting implementing the Equality Act, we had a case in the Malmesbury area. Yeah. It was in a light industrial area, but there was also a zoning issue. But on that case, we looked at significant pollution from a cement. They were making, ready-made cement, and that was causing a lot of dust. So we used actually the Section 28 duty of care principle in terms of enforcing, and not the Equality Act at that time. But it was an air pollution issue. Yeah, so that's with and quite successfully in terms of ensuring that they stop the activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Gottlieb. That was the one I was referring to. So thanks for that. And then also just to add one more, where we had in also the Drakenstein municipality, the environmental law enforcement, when I just joined the department at the time, the crematorium in the Paarl area was also then closed down, but obviously owners changed hands, but it wasn't a case that went to court, but it was really about law enforcement taking place in that area. At the crematorium, obviously through complaints received and investigated by the EMIs, and eventually the facility was shut, and ownership was transferred, and eventually the facility opened and is operating currently. But it's of course meeting the legislative requirements. Then in terms of emission licenses, versus Honourable van der Westhuizen spoke about small versus big factories and what is allowable. And so this is a very interesting question. In terms of when an atmospheric emission license, it's really issued in terms of Section 21 of the Air Quality Act, so it's a listed activity. And if a small factory, for example, it's of course not the size of the factory, but it's what the operations of the factory is about. If the factory exceeds the threshold for that is listed in the Section 21 listed activities, then of course in terms of design capacity and operation, then and also what is listed in the Section 21 listed activity, then that facility would need an atmospheric emission license. And the atmospheric emission license, for example, if it is an industry in the City of Cape Town, then the City of Cape Town becomes the licensing authority. If it's a municipality in the City of Cape Town, or if the City of Cape Town is the applicant, then we become the licensing authority for the City of Cape Town. And so it goes on, for example, in the Garden Route District Municipality, if the district is the applicant, we are the licensing authority. And if there's a facility and a private industry in the Garden Route District Municipality, then the Garden Route District Municipality becomes the licensing authority. And in terms of all these factories, the question about bigger and multiple smaller facilities versus a bigger one, what we are trying to do with the dispersion modeling is to look at the cumulative impact of facilities on the air quality in the Western Cape. And so that is, so we really focusing for now on the Saldanha Bay area because of the development and the proposed development that is happening in that area.
Joy,
Seems like Joy is.
Only me?
No, she did fade. She's most probably lost the connection. But maybe if I can add, yeah, so we are obviously looking at dispersion modeling and how that emissions from our inventory can be brought into that tool. Joy, you back on?
I am. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, we can.
Okay, not sure what happened there. And so really that is what we are looking at. And the challenge that we have there is to, of course, when you do dispersion modeling, you need data, not only air quality data, but you also need spatial data. And so we're working very closely with our GIS unit. We're also working with, and as I've mentioned, with SAWS. SAWS has a lot of meteorological stations all over the province. And so for that, we are basically wanting to partner with SAWS so that we can have access to that data from SAWS so that we can do that dispersion modeling to be able to see what is the cumulative impact of the facilities in the region, basically starting with Saldanha Bay. And then in terms of climate change, yes, methane is definitely far more damaging than CO2. What we do in terms, and Gottlieb can again come in here. It's really good to have Gottlieb as our chief director because he literally started this unit when it was pollution management, and then it split into pollution and waste management, and then eventually into the three directorates. And so in terms of waste, I know that our directorate waste management is monitoring the methane that is coming off the landfills. And so what can we do to limit it? Yeah, in terms of, I know people are doing meat-free days, Honorable, but that's just now, yeah, just being light about it. But Gottlieb, maybe if you can add more on the waste.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Chair and members. So what we are doing, obviously, we need to focus at source with whether you're dealing with air pollution or with water pollution or with waste. Tackling the issue at source is always the ideal. So you heard from our colleagues in waste on the presentation which we done to the standing committee a month or so ago. Was that, we're focusing on organic waste, the diversion of organic waste, because it's because of organic waste being in our landfills, that's the generation of the methane gas. So it is about getting the greens out, getting the organic waste out of our landfills, diverting that, that we will be able to improve on reducing the methane from landfills. But we're dealing with a historic situation where also what has gone into our facilities was not known. It was just dumped. There was no quantification of our waste streams. And so, yes, in all of our waste facilities, so the waste disposal facilities, we do have organic matter. But obviously, methane being a gas, it does then emit. It does then get released from the landfill. So over time, the methane does reduce as it escapes from the landfill. So what we have done a few years back, we done also to look at the viability because Chair, you mentioned about waste to energy, but not all facilities are actually feasible to look at extraction. The extraction in terms of going that route is quite also expensive, but you need to basically quantify what historically was there. But we done a calorific study in the late 2000s, 2009 or so, I think, that a calorific study to look at what regions could possibly, be beneficial for landfill gas extraction for energy. But each facility needs a thorough feasibility study if you really want to ensure that your money is not wasted. So that's where we are. It is around diversion currently. That would be the best method. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. If I can maybe call on any of my colleagues if they needed to add anything to the questions, to the responses to the questions, if that is okay, through you, Chair.
Please feel free.
Okay.
Sally,
There we go.
I see Ms. Benson's hand.
Thanks, Honourable Chair and colleagues. I just want to say with regards to capacity in municipalities, we, like the presentation showed, there were 30 air quality officers out of 31 that are designated. And we, so we work with the air qualities with officers within the municipalities and first encourage them to become EMIs. And once they EMIs and comfortable, that's how we then start working with the bylaws to ensure that they've got their bylaws in place. Thanks.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. Just maybe one comment that I forgot that I would like to mention. Also, a challenge that we have with the municipalities is in terms of air quality is, and what we've seen is that where municipalities have separate functions in terms of the organogram, where the function is actually separated out for air quality management and not part of the environmental health portfolio, that is actually where air quality management flourishes in the municipalities. And we assist those municipalities, but we assist all the municipalities, but we can see where there is a dedicated unit for air quality management. That is where the municipal mandate in terms of air quality management really gets taken forward. And so the one thing that we are now working with SALGA and with the national department is, to motivate and encourage municipalities to actually have that on the organogram, that the municipalities, that air quality gets separated out as a function, so that there can be focused function, and that the air quality isn't then basically what we found during our review of our AQMP. Municipalities told us that they are working on waste, they're working on climate change, they're working on everything in terms of environmental health, and air quality is then a component of that. So to strengthen the air quality management in the municipalities, municipalities really need to revisit their organograms to make it a separate function, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, honourable members. Again, over to you. Any further questions? May I then just ask two further questions? The first one is in terms of a carbon tax and CO2 emissions. What would be your role in that regard? And secondly, can you expect or even enforce the fitting of atmospheric monitoring equipment by certain industries or certain factories, etc., so that it's not a general monitoring of the air quality, but specific monitoring of emissions by a particular facility. Honourable Maran, before you respond, Dr. Liener, Honourable Maran is recognized.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure whether you have dealt with the issue of follow-ups. Maybe I've missed that part, Chair. Look, Chair, in the presentations, Dr. Joy have raised the issue of. That's why I've raised the issue of your solid waste, and specifically referring to Breda Valley. She raised the issue of your spatial planning, and I then thought that constructing a solid waste plant next to a living area, which is Avian Park and opposite Riverview in Worcester. This plant is exactly where you don't want it to be constructed. And if not now, maybe at a later stage, I would really like to know, basically, because it was also said that the department is basically a commenting authority. And in this process, what the comments was in terms of constructing a solid waste plant in Worcester, and it will be a regional one where waste will be transported from your Stellenbosch, Drakensberg, Langeberg, Fritzenberg to that one particular waste plant in Worcester. That's the one. And then and lastly, Chair, the issue of agriculture, and correctly said that agriculture is also one of the culprits when it comes to air pollution and so forth. Specifically, Chair, when it comes to your horticulture, your fruits, your orchards, and your vineyards, where at the beginning of your preparing for harvesting, you will find, specifically in winter, where some of the farmers burn tires because of the snow and the cold and the frost. That might kill some of their plants, burning tires, and we have seen that some of those farmers have now moved over to putting nets over the crops. But what are we saying to those who cannot afford, basically, to put up those nets and continuing to burning tires, polluting the air? What is their view in terms of that? Because we have seen it in many areas, specifically when it comes to your food farmers. Thanks.
Thank you. In the absence of any further hands, Ms. Lena, will you unmute yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chair. So in terms of, let's start with the agricultural question quickly. In terms of that, we've really been engaging with the Department of Agriculture and the Land Care Program. And we have, that was about 3 years ago, where we actively started engaging with them, and then also with the Waste Directorate, basically inviting them to our Air Quality Officers forums to basically make sure that the Land Care Program at the Department of Agriculture engage with the farmers to not burn the, they call it the derep, the frost, to not burn. And so we've actually seen an improvement there. However, it's constant awareness that is needed in that area. And so now what we do, and this is Sally's unit that is basically looking at burning permits, working to find out how the municipalities are doing this in terms of burning permits, because very often farmers apply for burning permits also, and that gets managed at the municipality by the chief fire engineer. And then so now we're looking, maybe Sally can also just talk about that, but essentially this is an area that we are focusing on now. So if Sally can just also talk about how we're going forward in that, that would be great. And then we'll carry on with the next question. Sally, over to you, through you, Chair.
Thanks. It's such a relevant topic, because at the moment we're busy with it for the August Equality Officers Forum, where we actually asked each and every municipality out there who issues burning permits, are you notified? Because what we often see is it's either the fire chief who issues the burning permit, or it's the emergency service guys, or it's a district fire protection that issues burning permits, and they don't tell the equality officer. The first time the equality officer hears about it is when there are complaints that come in. So we are actually, as I say, we've sent out questionnaires to the municipalities, and we're busy compiling the presentation for the August Equality Officers Forum. Thanks.
Thank you, Sally. And then working up, so in terms of the Honourable Maran, in terms of the solid waste Breda Valley, I don't have the EIA list in front of me, but we do comment on EIAs, as I've indicated. So in terms, the comments would really be in terms of our standard comments, which we would give in terms of the noise control regulations, our dust control regulations, and then also in terms of odor. So obviously odor would be something that would come from there. And so if I can call upon Peter. Peter works very closely with our waste colleagues, and so our waste colleagues generally would also then basically communicate with Peter and his unit, because that unit is also looking at the integrated environmental management, of which this regional waste plant in Worcester then is part of. Peter, can I call upon you? Through you, Chair.
Please come in.
Good day, honorable members. I just want to say, before I go to the, in terms of the burning permits, before I go to the regional side, the burning permits, I used to work in the city for equality, and we started the burning permits, and it was basically the equality department, and it was the fire department. So from a fire hazard perspective, the fire chief would, or the fire person that gives the authorization would give his input, and we from pollution side will give the permit in terms of how you operate. And back then, we had to go to the various sub-council. If it was in the area, then we have to discuss it, and we actually have to, give reasons. And then in certain areas, it wasn't allowed, like here in town, basically it wasn't allowed because of the control line. If it's below the control line, it wasn't allowed. So we normally give them a space. But when I left to join the department here, I found out that they changed the permit system. So they have like different permits, which we never had. So, and that's exactly that created most of the problems at the time. So in terms of when I went to Swellendam last week to help with the soil complaint, and I saw when I was driving past, like I was like after 7, I was in Worcester. I saw the fire, the fires that the inversion and all those things. So normally in Breda Valley, the fire, only the fire person will give, or the fire chief will give the permit, which actually, and then they give the permit, but they don't give the times and when they must start and when they must put it out. So early morning is not ideal because it will create the inversion. It will lie like low, and that is what happened. And in terms of frost, there's also other methods that people also use. There's also complaints regarding the frost. They have like a frost fan which they use, and then people complain about the noise or the vibrations of that also in terms of that. In terms of the waste sites, what I can say is there's normally what we have noted is that when there's a waste site developed and maybe there's a application for buffer reduction, whatever, then there's also the other side, residential, low-cost housing, especially, authorized on the other side. And it's like, it's difficult for us because now it is brought into stages. So there's a lot of, we as the department, we normally get applications where people will submit air quality impact report, which we have to look at and to see if they modeled everything right. But based on the development of new areas, maybe low-cost housing, close to waste sites, especially waste sites, it can create that people go there and they start fires, and when that fires burn, it burn. It burn underneath. It can burn for some time because of the gases that's involved in that type of activity. So in terms of that, we normally give comment. Like I said, we give comment on, and we give our reasons, and it is also in terms of planning, the way people plan, and it might have an impact. And also when you develop, then they normally develop, alongside big major roads close by, to real businesses, but it also creates opportunity for people to move in and to settle along the roads. And when there's maybe accident, if the accident or there's maybe unrest, then they block the roads. That's the other thing. So it's sometimes the land use and the officials, or it doesn't, they don't talk to each other and they miss out. And the other thing with the capacity at the local, especially the local, I'm not talking about the district, but at the local level, when the new, the department, they decided, or when they were restructuring,
Sorry, Peter, can we maybe just move on? Sorry,
No,
Chairperson.
I was just getting carried away.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, so Chair, also then to get back to the question on the fitting of the atmospheric monitoring units at facilities. So part of the conditions of an atmospheric emission license by when a factory, a facility is issued an atmospheric emission license, then very often there's also a condition that a facility would need to do emissions testing. And so that is then the responsibility of the facility. And so they would need to do that. Also, for example, in the city of Cape Town, they also, a facility, just as an example, the city of Cape Town could also, a municipality could ask a facility to also do fence line monitoring. And so, for example, we have with Astron, the old Chevron, there's the city of Cape Town has also asked that included in their the atmospheric emission license that the facility needs to do fence line monitoring. And that is ambient air quality monitoring. So there's a difference between emissions monitoring and atmospheric ambient air quality and emissions monitoring. So emissions monitoring would basically be the emissions that's coming out of a stack, whereas the ambient air quality is basically the air quality that we're breathing. And so the fence line monitoring, for example, at Chevron, Astron, would be ambient air quality. And so that would really be part of the atmospheric emission license, Chair. So definitely the licensing authorities would write that into the licenses where required. In terms of the carbon tax and CO2 emissions, so our role, Chair, is really just to provide inputs into the process, and our Directorate Climate Change in our department follows the carbon tax and the CO2 emissions. Our department is also busy with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which is at a much broader level than what we are involved in terms of air quality. So we would look at facilities emissions in terms of greenhouse gases, but our Directorate our Directorate Climate Change, they are basically looking at greenhouse gases and across all the spectrums, and then also in terms of the carbon tax, they would be that is really where they are focusing on carbon tax, and then also from a facility perspective, the National Department is using the information in the National Atmospheric Emission Inventory System to also contribute to basically calculate emissions, and that then would also go into providing inputs to anything that comes out of the carbon tax. And in fact, the revenue from the carbon tax is, of course, as we know, managed by SARS. And then also, so in terms of carbon tax, it's really managed by SARS, but we do provide inputs to the process, Chair. Then to come back to the question of Honourable Moran in terms of the solid waste Breede Valley. So Honourable Moran, I don't have the list in front of me. We do provide inputs to a lot of the processes, so that is one that I will go back into, and then we will let the Standing Committee know the inputs that we've provided. So that's from our side, Chair. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, honourable members. Any further questions to our departmental officials? In the absence of any further indications of members wishing to pose questions, I want to say thank you very much for your preparation, for your presentation, for the work that you are doing. I think the one thing that I just realized today again is that, you know, there are people are quick to complain about things like dust and smoke and odors, but obviously the whole issue of pollution affecting air quality goes a lot further, and it's also the invisible pollution that I think we as the public is not aware of, or we don't realize the work that you're also doing in that regard. So thank you very much to you all, and specifically or particularly to Mr. Harmse. Mr. Harmse, we wish you a wonderful time of retirement. And from my side, and I think I speak on behalf of the committee, I also wish you well in your retirement. May you live long and enjoy the fruits of your many years of hard work. And for a last word, can I give back to Mr. Gerber?
I just wanted to say thank you very much to the committee for allowing us the opportunity to share this important work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and you are welcome to leave. We are now going to move on to resolutions by the committee, and then also other business such as the approval of minutes, etc. Thank you very much, and thank you for the time that you've taken to prepare this very extensive presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair and members.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joy and team. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Jared.
Goodbye.
Thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, are there any resolutions that you would like to propose, emanating particularly from today's interaction? Good. I don't see any hands, so thank you very much. That deals then with that point on the agenda, which brings us to the next one, and that is the consideration of the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of May, our last meeting. Can I ask that Ms. Nika beam that onto our screens? Thank you very much. It's been there. I do know that we're a bit thin on the ground at that meeting, and I think it was only myself and Honourable Maran that would be able to confirm at this meeting whether the minutes are an accurate reflection of what happened on the 24th of May. Ms. Nika, please, can you go on to page 2? Page 3. Page 4. Can I get a proposal that we adopt the minutes?
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honourable Maran, and I can confirm that I've also gone through the minutes and I'm happy. And thank you very much, Ms. Niekerk. An excellent document and standard as always. Thank you, honourable members. That then brings us to the last item on the agenda, which is a general. I don't know if there are any matters that you would like to raise under general. Can I just remind members of our oversight visit next week to the Southern Cape. This stems from a number of decisions taken by members last year already, particularly the biofuels, the activated carbon, trying to put the alien vegetation that is now so prolific after the Knysna fires. Honourable Botha and myself were privileged to attend the Provincial Disaster Management Centre this morning, and they have really again reiterated the damage and the risks and the extent of the disasters caused by the fires, and particularly the last Knysna fire. I recognise the hand of Honourable Botha.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. I just want to remind you, Chair, that I will not be embarking on the oversight. Thanks.
Good, thank you very much, and I trust that that has been communicated to Ms. Niekerk. So thank you very much.
Indeed, it has.
Yes, so thank you very much, Honourable Maran.
Look, Chairman, and we have seen basically the discussion that we had yesterday in the Cluster B group regarding a decision that was taken that the committees will not pay for transport claims and whatsoever anymore, and we have to claim basically from our enabling an allowance, Chair. And I was speaking this morning to the procedural officer because it seems now that even our oversight visit, the decision that was taken will also impact, not so that it will impact on that, but there is some decision. So I'm considering, Chair, but I will inform the procedural officer. I'm considering whether I will go and whether I will stay on this, based on the decision that was taken somewhere else. It's definitely impacting on the cluster visit next week. I'm not yet sure on the oversight visits from Monday to Wednesday. Sure.
Yes. No, thank you very much, Honourable Maran, and I've been privy to some of that discussions. Unfortunately, that's a decision that was taken outside of this committee, and I know that there is ongoing interactions. And I also do know that you and our procedural officer are in contact with one another, trying to find alternate solutions to alleviate the effect of the decision that was communicated yesterday to us as members. So thank you very much for just informing me, this meeting, that your situation is also fluid at this point in time. But I would really, really love to have you with us on that oversight, and I really do hope that between you and our procedural officer, you would be able to find a solution. And I've also promised my support from my kind in trying to look for alternate solutions, because it's important for us that you, as a long-standing member of this committee, also be able to share in the experiences and also exercise your responsibility for the oversight role that we have. So thank you very much for that. And as I've said, I would really love you to be also be there. Good. So then, thank you very much. And with that, honourable members, before I close this meeting, can I just get an indication? Ms. Niekerk, any indication from your side? Anything that you would like to add?
No, Chairperson, nothing from my side. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think I did see Ms. Mshumpelo earlier in the meeting as well, and also to Ms. Morris, our ICT assistant. Thank you very much, honourable members. This then concludes the business of the day, and the meeting is therefore now adjourned. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.